The following video you're about to watch is the Q&A section from a private talk that I did titled Proven Strategies to Resolve Conflict and to Influence Stakeholders. If you haven't watched the talk already, I encourage you to do so. You can find it on the YouTube channel or click in the link in the banner or down in the description. It will all be linked there so you can find the talk easily. But in the Q&A section here, I referenced some of the tools and techniques that I went through inside the talk, so it's worthwhile just having that context as well. But in this Q&A, I go through a few questions and I thought the questions were really good, so I thought I would include them and I think they're valuable. So we go through topics like how do you convince stakeholders to give you or buy into and give you space and time to do activities like discovery? How do you get stakeholders to buy into and be motivated about directions that they didn't agree to or might not be their direction that they wanted to go down, and a few other topics. So hopefully you get some value out of the Q&A. If you have any further questions around resolving conflict or influencing stakeholders, I'll be happy to hear them. I'll be happy to try to answer them. So give this a watch. And if you do have questions, throw them in the comments below. I'll be happy to answer the questions that you have. And on that note, enjoy the Q&A. It's super hard. I agree. That's a very, very difficult one. I think I'm trying to reflect on it. Sometimes, like maybe I'll even just say openly and honestly too, sometimes you won't be able to get them excited, right? Like that's our goal and our aspiration. Like we want to get there. Of course we do. But sometimes you can't. Like sometimes they're just not going to be excited about it because they really believe in their other thing. I think what's more important is, and I hate to say and disagree and commit, but what's more important is the fact that they're not trying to continue to sabotage like the direction. So it's okay that you disagree with it. It's okay. But like, let's just go along with it. So I tend to invest my energy there and reflecting on some of those moments. I actually like literally have that conversation with them too. Like I understand where you're coming from. I get it, but can you also understand that this might be more important? And are you comfortable with the notion that maybe we just walk down this path for the next couple of weeks? And you can have a I told you so moment if you want to, but like just let us go down this path for a couple of weeks. And I tend to find just like the whole notion of, are you willing to just like let us try it for X period of time? Always helps. And I always put a time period on it because I think without a time period that leads to uncertainty, and uncertainty stresses people out. So you just want to put some clarity and time horizons on it. And that tends to work. And then you just need to work really hard to make sure that that was the best way. Or maybe you weren't empowered in that decision at all. And you agree with them and you're hoping that it doesn't go well. I mean, that could be also a reality. But I think that's probably my answer to that. Time and energy into just getting them to agree with the path. And you would love them to buy into it, but you're not always going to get there. And I actually love that. Thanks for saying that. And I love that reflection because that has been my experience too. And I've said this to many product managers that I've coached is it's more effort up front. What I'm asking you to do is more effort up front. Like you providing all that clarity and spending all the time communicating it and spending all the time to actually sit there and work with them to help them say no to themselves is more effort. It's easy to say no, right? It's much less effort to just be like, nope, we can't do it. But what will happen over time is you'll create more organizational clarity around the thing, and you'll have more people you'll have less people, I should say, less people coming to you over time because people will have more clarity on the goals and the strategy and what we're doing. And they'll be able to exactly that, say no to themselves. They'll be able to apply the filter themselves and say, do I actually want to bug somebody about this? Because actually like this is probably not that important right now. So it's more effort up front, but you'll save yourself more time over time. Yeah. I think the preventative strategy for me is clarity, is what I was just talking about there. The more clarity you can create, the better. Probably the only other, I mean, this ties into clarity. So like maybe we'll break it down and make it tangible because you're like probably thinking clarity, how do I do that? Communicating is a huge part of it. I often say if you don't feel like a broken record, you haven't said it enough. There's some research to suggest that people need to hear something 7 times in an organization before they actually think that it's something of value to the organization. So use that as a benchmark. Have I said it 7 times? Probably not. Most people say it like once and they're frustrated that they have to say it a second time. Well, I've got news to you. You need to say it 5 more times after that. So like communicating is going to help. Over communicating is going to help, because the more people understand what's going on, then obviously, just like Hamish was saying, we can start to filter those things. They can start to say no to themselves. Also, they can come into the conversation having a deeper understanding and appreciation of your perspective and your context. So there generally is less conflict, because if they have, you don't need to spend the time butting heads with them and giving them your conflict. Like you don't need to spend the time saying, no, but you don't understand. Like what we're trying to do is this, and we have these complexities and these issues and all that type of stuff. They walk into the conversation knowing that. So that's probably my biggest preventative strategy for it, and the thing that I recommend, and the thing that I've done, and it's kind of helped me. But yeah, you're never going to prevent everything. A good question. So the third reference point is going to help you actually kind of like get those, that help you identify that there's a misalignment between values, right? Like if you put, well, here's what I think, and then it's like, well, here's what you think. You can see that there's a difference. You could then try to resolve that, but I actually think it's less important. Like conflict resolution is not about getting everyone to agree, nor is influencing about getting 100% what you want. So here's probably another, if this is new to you as a concept, then maybe it's a surprise. But influencing doesn't mean you, like if you wanted this to be prioritized as number one, influencing doesn't mean that you get that prioritized as number one. And I think sometimes we do people an injustice by setting an unrealistic expectation where we say, "What, your job's to influence them? Like, why didn't you get it as the most important thing? Your job's to influence them." It's like, no, I influence them. My job's not to convince them. My job's to influence. It's a completely different thing to get them to actually agree with it versus not. If that's where I want to be, and they're over here and they move to here, I've influenced them. Right? It could be 10%, 20%, 50%. You've influenced them. So to me, it's less about how do I get us all to agree on the same shared values? And it's more about how do we understand each other's values, and then at least either agree to disagree, or, like agree on a way forward. And the way forward might even be, we have some things we still need that are unresolved that we need to go and resolve. So there might be some things that we need to go do some research and go do some work on, and then we can come back and talk. But at least we've agreed that there's a way forwards. And that's the whole point about conflict resolution, is we stop arguing about it and we put it into action, and we create forward momentum. And that's the point of influencing, is we move from a stalemate of I'm here and you're here, and we create a path forward. So I think that's what's more important. So I'd be using the third reference point in particular for that. And yeah, just trying to find, a way forward. Yeah. I would be trying to unpack why they believe in certainty, right? And why they don't believe in discovery. So again, underneath every opinion, there's a whole bunch of underlying assumptions and beliefs. So why don't they believe in it? What is it? And I had a recent example where I was coaching someone, they had the same situation. And I asked them that question, and they just kind of reflected themselves, and they said, oh, I think it's because they are optimizing for delivery, right? So the people don't believe in discovery because really they're really just focused on how do we just deliver more stuff. And if that's where your belief is, then of course discovery doesn't align with that. So now we need to work on trying to understand why they want to do delivery at all costs, and how do we, churn that out. And then we need to change that belief, which maybe is like helping to influence them, to help them understand that, as Jeff Patton would say brilliantly, and the faster you build crap, the more crap you get. So like, I love how he says it. So maybe it's influencing them to help them understand that. But there's other ways to influence too. Like another example is, well, let's just go with it. Let's just not do discovery. And then let's measure the impact of that actual thing. So I've done this several times now. And then you come back to them with all the results. You're like, oh, guess what? Customers aren't using it and they don't like it and it sucks, and whatever the results are. And then they start to engage with that. They're like, oh, that's fascinating. And you're like, yeah. So what we could do is we could try and spend some generally they start asking questions. Well, why is that happening? Why is that? You're like, great, we can answer those questions. Let us go spend some time answering those questions. And then you go do it, and then you change it, and then you have another conversation with them weeks later, and you say, yeah, do you know that thing that we did when we went and tried to understand why that was occurring? Yeah, that's discovery. And that's the value of it. And then this is one of my other change principles, which is show, don't tell. So I'm not trying to convince you that discovery is better. I'm just going to show you that it's better. I'm going to find a way to do that. Yeah. So, but it depends on what their belief is. I'll be trying to unpack that. I've got another thing, which is time box in discovery. So again, influencing, you can say, well, can you just let us do discovery for 2 weeks? Right. And sometimes they might be like, oh, okay, I'm willing, because like uncertainty again, like they just don't like it because they're like discovery. They're thinking again, what assumptions do they have? They might be thinking, oh, you're going to go do research for the next 6 months. You're like, no, I'm not. I'm like literally asking for 2-3 weeks. And that's a wrap. That's the Q&A. As I said in the beginning, if you have any further questions about resolving conflict or influencing stakeholders, I'd love to hear about them. Throw them in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer them. And you never know, maybe it'll turn out to be a future video in itself. But I'd love to hear them. And on that note, thanks heaps for the support, and I'll see you at the next one.